Hello, my Bill 5000 Nation. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully, everyone's having a great day. If not, I hope it gets better from here. All right, we are back with another Coffeehouse Crime. This one is titled The Girl Who Came Back from the Dead, the case of Delimar Vera. Delimar? I'm not good with names, people. Shit. That person right there, it's their case. Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and get into this story. Go ahead, turn the lights down low, put on something comfy, cup, someone special. Let's get concerned. This poor child. I'm very concerned. Yeah.
House fires. A nightmare scenario for so many people out there, and one we all hope to never experience. But what would you do if you were to lose your newborn baby to such a scenario, only to
Fuck.
receive the shock of your life over half a decade later? Now,
My newborn baby. My new bro. There would be no coming back from that for me in any way, shape, or form. That would end my day. That'd end my shit.
sometimes we can discover truths through unconventional or even bizarre means. But have you ever had your world changed by a birthday party, bubblegum, and watching CSI?
CSI New
Good morning,
York.
good afternoon, or good evening,
Bro, I can't say it has, but my life has been changed by an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger. Yeah.
folks. My name is Adrian, and welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime. Today we're looking at the bizarre case of Delimar Vera. Now, this story can be summed up in one word: unbelievable. In absolutely
Fault.
every conceivable way. In fact, not
Oh,
even
God.
Hollywood look at this story without laughing in its face. And before we dive into this rollercoaster of a story, I'd love to thank Babbel for sponsoring today's video. So many
Bible.
people recommended Babbel to me before it became a long-term sponsor of the channel, and I can
Bibble
clearly see
babble.
why. It's a really good language learning app that you can use to learn many different languages. In fact, it's the #1 language learning app in the world, with over 10 million subscriptions worldwide. Whether it's for travel,
See, I'm sorry. Every time I hear babble, my papa's voice pops up in my head, and I always hear him say, because he used to say this to me all the time, "Boy, I am so tired of hearing your bibble babble bullshit. Shut it." Every time I hear him say babble, that's what pops up in my fucking head.
connecting with loved ones, professional development, or even self-improvement, there are plenty of languages to choose from. Their courses are extremely easy too and teach real-world conversations. With friends and family overseas in Germany, Babbel's fast and efficient way of learning helps me learn even with a busy schedule, which is of course why I use the app during my morning coffee while I'm waking up.
Die Stadt ist von Bergen umgeben.
Die Stadt ist von Bergen umgeben.
Babbel is scientifically proven to help you start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. Give it a shot, there's nothing to lose, as Babbel offers a 20-day money-back guarantee. So click the link in the description below or scan the QR code to get a massive 60% off your subscription.
Can
Thank
never
you to
scan
Babbel for
those damn
sponsoring
things.
today's
I
video.
don't know why.
Thank you to you folks for supporting us content creators, and now let's get straight back into today's case. Please, grab yourself a coffee, pull up a seat, and get ready for the deep dive. This is the
The funniest thing ever. All right, I'm on my phone. I'm doing something. I forget what it is I'm doing. I think it's for. I want to see the cable company. I was setting up an online account. I don't remember. All I know is I'm on my phone doing it because there's no internet. That's what it was. There was no internet, so I was on my phone doing it, trying to get everything set up when we moved into the new house. And so I'm on my phone. I'm doing it, and the next screen pops up. In order to do this, I have to scan this QR code with my phone. But it's on my phone. I, Thinking about it to this day makes this eye twitch.
case of Delimar Vera. Welcome to Philadelphia, the 6th most populous city in the United States, the 2nd largest behind only New York City, and one filled with years of history. Although most of you out there will be familiar with the world-famous Philly cheesesteak, Philadelphia has so much more to offer. Whether it's their annual Mama's
I love going to Philly. No lie. Used to go there a lot whenever I was little. Philly was the first place I ever had any kind of Philly cheesesteak. Ever. Like, mom and dad would not get them just from here or there. It had to be authentic. I had to have that cheese whiz, bruh. And Philly was the first place I ever had my very first gyro, whatever the fuck you want to call it. It was amazing.
New Year parade, the city's extensive jazz scene, or countless art museums, you'll never be short of entertainment and intrigue. Being the biggest city in Pennsylvania, it is also the 9th most congested city for road traffic in the United States. But getting around is still made easy with its well-equipped public transport system. Supported by a relatively low cost of living, it is no surprise that it's a popular and rapidly growing place to live. And of course, we can't talk about Philadelphia without mentioning Always Sunny, can we? The city is comprised of over 25 unique neighborhoods, ranging from highly affluent and fancy, all the way through to the friendly bustle of honest working class folks. And it's in one of those latter neighborhoods, located on Hurley Street, that we meet the folks of today's case. Las Cuevas, aged 25, and Pedro Vera were Puerto Rican immigrants. They lived happily together with their 2 sons, Wilfredo and Israel, who were aged 5 and 4 respectively. While Luz stayed home with the children, Pedro worked very hard to support the family as a mechanic. The family of 4 lived in a small but comfortable 2-floor townhouse.
Poor Fredo.
And in December of 1997, they were about to expand their family once again. It was on December the 5th, 1997, that the couple welcomed their first daughter into the world. And her name, Delimar Vera, will be today's case subject. With dark hair, dimpled cheeks, and big brown eyes, she was the apple of their eye. And needless to say, the family doted on her from day one. Now, both Pedro and Luz did not have a strong grasp of the English language, and instead spoke their native language, which was Spanish. While not necessarily a problem in their day-to-day lives, it was when Delimar was born that Pedro did not quite understand what was needed when signing the birth certificate. In the end, and not wanting to sign something that Pedro didn't quite understand, he kept his name off this birth certificate, which is something that's crucial to remember later in today's case. Both Pedro and Luz had large extended families that lived relatively close to the couple, and
hey, if it's any consolation, I don't have a father on my birth certificate either. I don't. I really don't. It's all good though.
family members would often drop by around the family home. This frequency of visitation only increased after the birth of Delimar, and many family members wanted to help the couple with their newborn baby. So it was no surprise when, on December the 15th, one of Pedro's cousins came to visit, and her name was Carolyn Correa. Not only had Carolyn never been to the home before, but she had only met Luz once. And with Pedro out repairing her car, the conversation between the two women was reportedly very strained and stilted. The two seemingly had very little in common to talk about. The only thing that Carolyn could relate to Luz with was the fact that she also had a baby recently, although this baby was not with her at the time. To try and break up the awkward atmosphere, Luz tried to make herself busy by putting Delimar to bed in the front upstairs bedroom. She then carried on with the household chores while Carolyn waited for Pedro to finish the repairs. Eventually, though, Carolyn left the house abruptly, only to return a few minutes later to say she had forgotten her purse upstairs in one of the bedrooms. She then departed and disappeared, leaving Luz with her 3 children in the house. Luz continued with her housework, but before getting much further, she heard a deafening banging noise coming from the 2nd floor, and worryingly, it seemed to be coming from Delimar's room. She immediately ran upstairs to see what the noise could have been, but upon reaching the bedroom, she was met with a scene that no mother should ever have to face.
Oh God.
Outside of the house, orange flames could be seen burning fiercely in the bedroom, with smoke billowing from the open window.
What?
Neighbors who saw the flames licking at the building bravely climbed across the roof with a garden hose, aiming it at the the window, they tried to quell the blaze, but sadly, it was to no avail. Luz desperately fought through the flames to open the bedroom door to where Delimar was sleeping. Fire and smoke obscured her vision, but through the wave of heat, Luz was certain that she could only see an empty crib, and the bedroom window was wide open. Locked in a state of panic, Luz's screams could be heard throughout the entire family home, as she desperately tried to save her two sons. Upon hearing her screams, two other neighbors bravely entered the house in an attempt.
This is getting so fucked up so fast, bro. We was on a beautiful tour of Philadelphia, and now we're in the fiery pits of fucking hell. Literally. What did this bitch do? Did she steal the baby and set everything on fire?
To reach
Why?
Delimar, but sadly, after reaching the top of the stairs, they were met with a 5-foot wall of flames. Firefighters arrived soon after and immediately got to work, but they would have to drag Luz away from the house as she screamed and cried for her baby. Pedro arrived at the scene shortly after this, and although it felt like a lifetime, the fire was actually contained and extinguished within 14 minutes.
Man, that was that.
Although her sons had escaped the blaze unharmed, Luz would sustain burns to her hands and face from trying to reach Delimar's crib. She could not stop repeating the same words to firefighters, that someone had stolen her daughter. Unfortunately, no one believed her, but also, half understandably, they all blamed it on shock. Firefighters attempted to locate Delimar in the burnt-out shell of what once was the bedroom. However, they were unable to find anything that resembled human remains. And although a small yellow package was initially suspected to be Delimar, this was later proven to merely be bedding. The ignition source of the fire was eventually blamed on.
They thought the baby melted into a small yellow package? I mean, I know babies are soft and squishy, but do they melt when you get them around extreme amounts of heat? Because I've had 3. None of them have melted.
A home-rigged extension cord attached to a space heater near the baby's crib. A report concluded that no signs of arson were found, and that there was no reason to suspect foul play. Given the known flammable nature of extension cords with space heaters, it was entirely reasonable to believe that the two together could have started the inferno. Due to the fact that no body had been found, medical examiners were twice dispatched to the scene to find Delimar's remains, and this also included a forensic anthropologist. However, no human remains were ever located, and Delimar's body was presumed to be completely incinerated by the heat and severity of the blaze. But with no evidence of a body to be found, a death certificate could not be issued. Luz was understandably heartbroken, but saying that, she simply refused to believe her daughter had died in the fire. For a start, why was the cot empty? And why had the bedroom window been open on a freezing cold December afternoon? Put short, it simply made no sense. With her mother and father both refusing to believe that she had died, no funeral was ever held for Delimar. But as the days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and then months into years, hopes began to fade. The couple moved several times after the fire, and 2 years after the tragic event, they welcomed their 4th child into the world, a 3rd son named Samuel. Pedro often told co-workers that he didn't believe she was dead, and instead was kidnapped by someone close to the family. To add to this, it was around 2 years after the fire, and while attending a baby shower, that something very peculiar happened to Pedro. After arriving at the venue, he bumped into one of his distant cousins, Carolyn, who was also there with her daughter, Elia Hernandez. But when introduced to Pedro, he couldn't shake the feeling that her face and smile were extremely familiar, and something about this felt alarmingly uneasy. Now, perhaps it was her dazzling smile, or maybe it was because she was the same age as Delimar. Luz was doggedly persistent in her belief that Delimar was still alive, and the news that Pedro had told her left her absolutely ruthless. She would even go as far to ask Pedro for $500 so he could hire a private investigator. Now, sadly, Pedro didn't have anywhere near that kind of money, and he was barely able to keep the family afloat with his multiple jobs. Luz reached out to lawyers instead, but sadly, none of them would offer any help without a $100 per hour fee, which of course Luz simply
Damn.
didn't have. She felt entirely helpless and ignored by the state. Eventually, she became so miserable that, in her grief, between December 2000 and March 2001, she sought counseling for her depression. And eventually, this ongoing trauma, stress, and grief put a serious strain on Luz and Pedro's relationship, and ultimately, the couple would finally split up.
Oh, I would imagine. I mean, how often does the parents make it? How often do the parents stay together after a tragedy like that? I mean, seriously. And even if it's neither one of their fault, eventually it's going to be someone's fault. Eventually there's going to be hard feelings. Eventually, you got to have someone or something to blame. And if you can't, all you have left to blame is yourself. And then it usually just don't last very long after that. Once, you start blaming yourself and everything else, it's done. It's awful. It's awful to say, but I figured them having the fourth kid, would be able to absorb their attention a little bit. That's awful. They had to bring another child into the world just to split up like that. That's awful.
We're moving forward to January 2004. More than 6 years had passed since Delimar's death, with more than a year since Luz and Pedro had separated. Both Luz and her sister were attending a birthday party in Kensington, hosted by Pedro's sister Evelyn for her granddaughter. And also in attendance of this party were two familiar faces, Carolyn and her daughter Elia. With the party in full swing around her, Luz gazed over the group of children until suddenly she focused on one particular little girl. She had a broad smile, dark hair, deep brown
Oh,
eyes,
it's a cutie.
and very distinctive dimples in her cheeks. Dimples that matched Luz's son. Now, Luz couldn't rationally explain her feeling at this moment, but deep down she knew that the girl she was staring at was in fact not Elia, and instead it was her very own daughter, Delimar.
Is it?
After a mere few minutes, Luz had formulated a rather smart plan in her mind, and after pretending that Elia had bubblegum in her hair, she tried to remove it for her. And while pretending to remove this bubblegum, she took some of Elia's hair and placed it in a paper napkin. Now, to most, this sounds absolutely crazy,
Nope,
and
DNA.
even to me, this sounds like quite a long stretch. But you see, Luz had watched one too many CSI episodes, and knew that one of the only ways she could prove this was her daughter was through some form of DNA test. Despite these tests costing several $100s and her story sounding batshit insane, she eventually persuaded a representative to get this test concluded. The test was scheduled, and what came back was an absolute shocker. The results were conclusive, and Elia Hernandez was in fact her daughter Delimar Vera. But this jaw-dropping revelation begged one huge question. What in the bloody hell was Delimar doing under the care of Carolyn? So, Carolyn Correa was Pedro's cousin by marriage, and although the two were friendly, they were not that close. Carolyn had 3 children from previous relationships, and reportedly had undergone a sterilization procedure. Upon getting into a new relationship with a man named Andrew Moore, he now wanted to have a baby with her, which was unfortunate as she was no longer able to. It is speculated that Carolyn suffered from a psychological disorder known as pseudocyesis, a condition where a woman will believe she is pregnant and may even experience symptoms of pregnancy despite not actually being so. It was not long before the fire in 1996.
That's the thing. Holy shit. Why? Who would want an ailment like that? Oh my god, I'm pregnant. Bitch, you ain't pregnant. Yes, I am. You're 102. You tell me I'm a liar.
That Carolyn told several family members that she was around 8 months pregnant. And although several people raised their eyebrows, no extended questions were asked by anyone. On that fateful day, Carolyn had asked Pedro if he could repair her car, and as we know, during this time, she stayed in the home with Luz. It is speculated that, in this moment, she had found out about Delimar and concocted a plan. With Luz occupied with the housework, and Delimar almost the exact age to fit her fabricated pregnancy, Carolyn saw her one and only chance. And after sneaking upstairs, she smuggled the 10-day-old baby from the bedroom and out of the window. It's theorized she returned through the window without Delimar, left the house downstairs through the front door, and then returned moments later to say she'd forgotten her purse. This was likely an excuse to ignite the fire, which, not long after she left the house, began to rage through the bedroom. After avoiding contact with the outside world for multiple days, Carolyn then returned home to Andre, where she claimed she'd given birth alone in her own home. She then filed for a birth certificate, dating Elia's birthday as January the 6th, 1998, and listed herself as the sole attendant to a home birth. She went on to move to Wellingborough in New Jersey, and spent the next 6 years raising Elia, lovingly entering her into pageants and various small acting roles. Interestingly, in 1999, Carolyn admitted to Andre that he wasn't actually Elia's father, and this was proven through a private DNA test. Though why she decided to lie on top of her initial lies still remains unclear. Elia's DNA test was groundbreaking.
This makes no sense. No sense at all. Why? How are you gonna imagine up on a pregnancy and then go out and steal some poor motherfucker's baby? You're a fucked up individual, bro.
But to be sure, the state ordered a second test to be completed between Carolyn and Elia. And as police began to look into Carolyn's background, they found some very concerning details. It is reported that back in the year 1996, while working as a town clerk for the Hamilton Township, she was found guilty of theft and was due to be fired imminently. However, in an attempt to destroy any evidence of this, she set fire to the office. Nobody was hurt in the blaze, and ultimately her plan failed. She was later charged with arson and embezzlement, receiving 5 years probation for her crimes. And obviously, this was now a major red flag for the police. Incredibly, Carolyn seemed to think that she could keep getting away with her lies. And just before the DNA sample was due to be taken from Elia's cheek, Carolyn sprayed a solution into her mouth and told her not to swallow until after the swab. However, again, this attempt of sabotage failed, and when the DNA results came back, it was confirmed that Carolyn was not actually Elia's mother. Carolyn fled immediately after the tests were
Poor dumb lady. She tried. Yeah. But I don't know. Don't just.
taken, which ended up in a manhunt for the kidnapper. This too would fail, and she was eventually tracked down and arrested 3 days after she had fled, before being held on a $1 million bail. She was ultimately charged with kidnapping, arson, assault, concealing the whereabouts of a child, and interfering with the custody of a child. Before the trial date could be arranged, Luz was desperate to be reunited with her long-lost daughter. But this was a reunion that was of grave concern to psychologists. Given that the only mother Delimar had ever known was now proven to not actually be her mother, they had no idea what impact this could have on her trust for those close around her. To add to this problem was a language barrier. Luz was primarily a Spanish speaker, whereas Delimar had been raised in an English-speaking household. Anyway, these two issues were enough to greatly stress out Delimar's entire team of psychologists, and they would all have to just wait and see how this panned out. Following the news, Delimar was extremely upset. She screamed, cried, and shouted for her fake mother. But when child psychologists explained the story to her, she seemed to calm down. Eventually, Luz and Delimar scheduled to meet in a family room of social.
I would be the worst child psychologist. I'm gonna be like, bro, all right. You got your little stuffed SpongeBob there. You having fun? All right. I'm gonna put these Kleenexes here. I'm gonna put that trash can right here, right there, because you might need them here in a little bit. Those gonna be to blow your nose. And trash can, no, that's gonna be for you to throw up in, because things are about to get really fucked really fast for you. You're stolen goods, bro. Okay, picture this. Picture you belong to someone else. And then this other person came in, took you, and then made you theirs. But you're not theirs, you're the other person's. That's your life now. You will never see another family member ever again. You're going into police evidence. I don't know how this shit works, but all I know is you're stolen property. You gotta be bagged and tagged, and yeah, I'm sure they'll bring you something to eat. Your evidence. They can't have you die.
Services. A common tactic with reunions such as this. Entering the room to finally be reunited with her daughter, Delimar jumped out from under the table and shouted, "Surprise!" Luz broke down. She cried, gently asking the 6-year-old, "Do you know who I am?" Delimar replied with, "You're my mum." Moving into legal proceedings, Carolyn's case began in 2005. Her defense team argued that she'd been
I would have blubbered like a little bitch right there. I'm not even going to lie. Like, I'm wanting to blubber like a little bitch right now. Bro.
suffering from pseudocyesis, and that, in her mind, she had truly believed that Delimar was her child. They also argued that Carolyn must have had an accomplice on the very night of the kidnapping, and tried their best to pin the blame on Pedro, who was Delimar's biological father. They further claimed that, because his name was not on the birth certificate, he did not want to have Delimar as his child, which, of course, was strongly denied by Pedro. The prosecution fought back at the defense, claiming Carolyn had shown willful and deliberate actions into stealing Delimar in a calculated manner, and through her selfish actions, had denied Pedro and Luz 6 years of their daughter's life and milestones.
Oh, yeah.
While it wasn't in question if Carolyn suffered from depression or not, the judge also noted that she was more manipulative than delusional, saying, "You robbed a small girl of a very great deal." Carolyn showed little remorse in court and only apologized for the confusion she had caused both families. However, the judge was not impressed, and Carolyn was sentenced to a minimum of 9 years behind bars for arson and abduction. She holds a maximum of 30 years, which is both understandable but also kind of crazy. Here on Coffeehouse Crime, we often see murderers get much less time than this. Legal proceedings didn't end here.
Well, there was so much shit to it, though. I mean, you murder someone, you ended their life. You didn't just, you ended this child's life, gave it a new life, ended that life, gave it another life, which was its old life. This child is going to be fucked for however many lives it's got left. I, if I get it. You kill someone, you deserve life in prison. You deserve, a good stint of time. That's bullshit. But to do something like that against a child, I'm sorry, that's worse. It is. Like, literally, this child is probably going to be scarred for freaking life. Might trust people, might not trust people. We don't know. Might grow up and be a doctor, a lawyer. Might grow up and be a drugged out prostitute. We don't know. We don't know how this is going to affect her later on down the road. Yeah, I think the lady should be held more reliable, because what if it fucked up the kid so bad that the kid eventually grows up and starts like just killing people? That's should fall back on the lady for fucking it up so bad. So yeah, I think she should have got more time. Don't look into my logic. I say a lot of shit. Okay.
Here, however, Luz and Pedro would also try to sue the state for their poor handling of the case, though we don't actually know how this went. The rest of Delimar's life
Not at
appears to
all.
have been a good one so far. Her name was legally changed back to Delimar, and she was raised by Luz alongside her 3 brothers. She is now a fully grown woman, is currently married to a man named Desire, and even has a son of her own now. Delimar currently works in HR for a rental company as a talent advisor. And
Oh,
if her
yeah.
Instagram is anything to go by, she now seems to have built a wonderful life for herself. If you're interested, you can find her at Delimar Vera. Carolyn served 9 years of her sentence, before being released on parole in 2013. Understandably, she has a lifelong ban on contacting Delimar or her family. It is not known where she is or what has happened in her life, but I hope that, whatever she is doing, she regrets and is remorseful for her actions.
Oh yeah.
And I think that just about concludes our story today, folks, but I'd love to hear what you think about this case.
I'll tell you exactly what I think about. That's some fucked up shit, bro. Broski's family just stole his baby. Like right out the window. Like the window originally had an air conditioner in it, but is that the way she went out? Was through the air conditioner? And she's like, come on, baby. If you want to live, take my hand. I know I make jokes, but that is really fucked up. That's crazy. That no one put it together before this. Like the people around her should have realized that it was bullshit. You know, the people close around her should have realized it was bullshit and been like, "Hey, bro, I know you said you was pregnant, but you never gained like a bit of weight. I know you went through all the bullshit and you tried to act like it, but where'd you get that baby?" Cause I just heard in the thing like a couple weeks ago that your cousin's missing a baby that looks just like that fucking baby, and you come home with a baby like that out of nowhere, and I'm gonna call bullshit. I'm gonna call bullshit. I am. I would have. I'd been that dude. I'd be like, you baby stealing little bitch. Like, no, you can't do that. All right. I really enjoyed today's video though. Like, what the fuck? You know? I really enjoyed it though. All right. If y'all enjoyed today's video as much as I did, please go down there and leave a thumbs up. If you're a fan of the spooky, scary, strange things that just make you second guess family, think about subscribing. Watch some of these videos. Don't trust no one. Period. Don't trust no one at all. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye. Man, that was crazy. I would have. I She should have stayed more than the 9 years. I'm sorry. You fucked this whole family. Like, what if the family wouldn't have got divorced? What if they would have stayed together? Everything could have been different. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think everything happens for a reason, and everything plays out the way it's supposed to, and everything works its way. You know, everything works itself out in the end, and all that good shit. I do believe that. But what if? What if? Damn, I hate it when it's just what if.